Are things worse at Oklahoma State than they are at West Virginia? We're going to find out in today's show, which is brought to you in part by Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner Attorneys at Law and BetUS Online Sportsbook and Casino, because we're bringing on someone who covers Oklahoma State, and we're going to have a conversation about the Cowboys and just what to expect this Saturday. And we're going to have that conversation right after this word from one of those sponsors. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians, because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. What is up? Welcome into another episode of Couz's Corner. Come on in, make yourself comfortable, belly yourself up to the bar, and let me serve you up a shot of top-shelf college football content. On tap today, I have a guest bartender to help me pour out those shots, Mr. Dekota Gregory, who covers Oklahoma State over at Pistols Firing. Dekota, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you coming on the show. I know you're a busy guy, so I thank you for taking time out of your day.
Of course.
Before we get into the show, man, just let everybody know where they can find you and your work and what you and your partners are doing over there at Pistols Firing.
I cover Oklahoma State for pistolsfiringblog.com. Our Twitter is @pistolsguys. You can find me at Dekota Gregory. We were joking. I get an original username because my name is spelled wrong. It's Dekota. It's not A like everyone else. But yeah, we cover everything OSU. So whether it's not just football season, if the Mountaineers are going to Stillwater for basketball, wrestling, baseball, whatever, we even do all those. We're one of the few outlets that even do all the smaller revenue sports as well.
Awesome. Well, that's great, man. That's good. You know, those sports, I don't have time to cover those. I wish I could, but those sports deserve more coverage, man. So it's admirable that you all do that over there.
They do. We enjoy it, though. It's fun.
Yeah. Good.
Fun time.
Now, are you all a fan site, or are you a journalism site? How would you describe
journalism? I mean, I know we have blog in our title.
Mm-hmm.
So Kyle Cox founded the website in 2014, I want to say is the year. It might have been longer. It might have been 2011. 2011. OSU's big year. Started more as a bloggy site. Then it just kind of took off. Marshall was their first full-time guy that they hired a couple years ago. Kyle Porter they both write for CBS. Porter covers golf. Kyle Boone covers college basketball for CBS. They kind of, hey, this is a lot going on. They took a step back. Marshall now owns the company. We got credentialed 5 years ago, so we're just like every other site, newspaper, whatever it is.
Awesome.
Credentialed in there, trying to ask tough questions if we have to, whatever it may be.
Well, awesome. Congrats on that. That's a big deal. Let's go ahead and jump in to the content here, man. I wanted to bring you guys on, or bring you on to talk about Oklahoma State a little bit. I've obviously done some research. I've watched a couple of their games, or at least parts of them. And I know they've had some struggles, especially on the defensive side of the ball, at least statistically defensively. But when you hear Coach Gundy talk, he seems to put more of the blame on the offensive side of the ball. At least that's in what I've heard in his press conferences. Is that accurate? That he's doing that, and do you agree with that sentiment? Is it more of an offensive issue, or do you think it's more of a defensive issue?
Which I think Gundy, no matter what, he's an offensive guy. He played quarterback at Oklahoma State. I think that's just kind of his forte, so he's going to expect more out of them. That's what he's going to know more out of. But I think even for fans, not just Gundy, the offense is definitely the most disappointing aspect of OSU struggles right now the last 2 weeks, because the defense struggling and giving up a lot of yards and giving up big plays. That was something we saw last year out of them. I mean, we weren't going into the season thinking, hey, this is going to be a really good defense. We thought it would be better. They brought in a brand new defense coordinator last year, Brian Nardo from a Division II Gannon, brought in a whole new 3-3-5 system. They kind of was more of a 4-5-2. I mean, it's kind of been, they set with it, but they didn't set with it. So we knew that was going to be an issue. The offense is not what we thought would be an issue. You have Ollie Gordon, the reigning Doak Walker winner coming back. You have a 7-year quarterback in Alan Bowman coming back. You have not only do you have every offensive line coming back, I believe it's the most experienced offensive line in college football history because you have 6th, 7th year guys on there, and that's not something that's happened until this time and age. And then you had some receivers that they had injuries last year. You expect big things out of them. They win 10 games last year with receivers who had to step up. They had Leon Johnson, the third Division III guy, had to step up, had a great season. And so now you have those guys back. You have Brendan Presley's back, who's been, for Mountaineer fans, probably feels like he's been there for a decade. And so I think the offense just had such high expectations, especially the run game. So when you see that they can't get the run game going, they can't score points against teams that you thought, well, anyone they could score points against. So I think that's why the offense is getting a big part of the blame, is because there were such high expectations for that group of guys.
Yeah. Makes sense. Being an off, and Neil Brown kind of does the same. I've noticed he does the same thing sometimes in press conferences where he's an offensive guy. He actually calls the plays, so he has a tendency to drift more that direction anytime he's trying to blame. He'll talk about the defense, but if he's going to be hard on one side of the ball, it's usually on the side of the ball he's calling the plays on, and which I guess is fair, right? He doesn't want to throw the other side of the ball under the bus too much. You talked about the offense and the kind of surprising struggles. What do you think? Why has Ollie Gordon not been able to get going? Do you think it's him? Do you think it's the O-line? Do you think it's the play calling? What in your mind has been the issue there, Dekota?
I will definitely say it's not him. I mean, Marshall did a thing last week. Marshall are the owner of our site. He did something last week. So before Kansas State, looking at kind of all these Pro Football Focus numbers, how many yards after carry. And it was something staggering. I don't remember the exact number, 87% of his rushing yards have come after contact. And that was before Kansas State. So, I mean, it's like as soon as he gets the ball, he's getting hit, which is almost more absurd because, again, he's running behind the same offensive line that blocked for him last year when he won the Doak Walker. So it's not like it's, these group of guys don't know what they're doing. Gundy continually says every week we hear he was just loading the box, right? Even Neil Brown, I just was editing something that we wrote of, 3 things that he said yesterday during his press conference. And it was, he sees Ollie Gordon's numbers, but their main goal is, hey, got to stop Ollie Gordon. Like, you stop Ollie Gordon. And now I think it's going to be even more of an emphasis because Utah and Kansas State both did that and said, hey, we're going to stop Ollie Gordon. We're going to make Alan Bowman beat us. And that has worked out tremendously for both of them. And so I think it's just everyone loading up on Ollie. Casey Dunn, the offensive coordinator, is getting the brunt of most of it because a lot of time it comes down to, hey, this defensive coordinator, they're all doing the same thing to stop you. So why are you not figuring out how to schematically with the same guys, the same talent, how to be able to move the ball as well? And it did. I don't know how much you watched of the Kansas State game, but Ollie looked great in the first 2 drives. He had, I think, 6 carries in the first drive, and he had a catch. He was running guys over for first downs. He hurdled a guy, and it was like, okay, Ollie Gordon is back to being Ollie Gordon that we saw last year. And then they just kind of quit handing him the ball. He got 80 to 90% of his snaps or his carries in the first 2 drives, and Gundy blamed it on falling behind, but it wasn't like it was a blowout at halftime. So I don't know the exact thing. That tends to be OSU fans get frustrated with Casey Dunn because it seems like once he goes off his script of 15, 20 plays, you never know what's coming then. And he got off his script of, hey, let's give Ollie Gordon the ball, get down a little bit. He's off his script, and it's kind of like he forgets who I believe his numbers don't match it, but still one of the best running backs in the country is in your backfield. So it's a long-winded answer to say, I guess, I'm not really sure what's going on in the backfield right now at Oklahoma State.
It's funny you said that about the carries because I actually put something – I was watching the game early on, and I put something on X. I said, OSU fans, why are they not giving Ollie Gordon the football, Because like you said, they were only down 1 or 2 scores. They weren't down – in my opinion, they weren't down far enough to stop utilizing your game plan, to get away from your game plan yet, And when you have a guy that can, break off a big run at any moment, like Ollie Gordon, to me, it's ludicrous to stop hanging the ball. So I actually agree with those OSU fans, man. I didn't understand it. But again, I'm not a coach. I don't see what they're seeing, but maybe they saw something that it just wasn't going to work. But I was wondering the same thing. When you have a back that good and that talented, I'm not sure why they weren't utilizing more, but I appreciate you clarifying that. And the thing, though, that intrigues me as someone who covers West Virginia, I cover it as a fan. I'm not credentialed, at least not yet. But I watch as a fan and I cover as a fan. This plays right in to a degree, loading the box and trying to stop Ollie could actually benefit Oklahoma State to a degree. And I'll tell you why. I don't know how much you know about West Virginia, but the biggest weakness so far has been the pass defense and the pass coverage specifically. So if they force Alan Bowman to throw the football, and, Brendan Presley, I know how good he is. We know how good, I've seen Stribling and how good he is, and Owens. Those guys can hurt them. So I'm a little concerned as a fan about that. I know Bowman's completion percentage isn't great, and he is prone to throw interceptions at times. But our secondary is not necessarily great at getting interceptions, number one. And two, again, that's been the weakest part of the West Virginia team, has been that pass defense. So what are your thoughts on, do you think Alan Bowman and that Oklahoma State offense would be able to capitalize on that game plan if that's the way Neil Brown and Jordan Leslie and that defense decides to play it?
If you had asked me this 3 weeks ago, I would have said absolutely. But even going into Utah, I was like, they're going to win. They're going to try to shut down Ollie. The game's going to be on Alan Bowman. And I had the utmost confidence in Alan Bowman. I went in, I kind of put my foot in my mouth saying this offseason, I was all about Alan Bowman, how, the expectations that OSU had for the season to be I predicted them to go 11-1. A lot of people predict them to go 10-2, win the Big 12. I mean, they're picked in the top 3, of the conference. I was like, if he accomplishes that, if he takes them to a Big 12 championship in back-to-back years, I would consider him one of the best quarterbacks in OSU history.
Mm-hmm.
Just if those expectations are met, and obviously anything can happen. We saw that last season because they were kind of in the same boat last year and made that championship game. But the way he's performing now, it's like, obviously you can't put a guy in the same category as some of those names, because it's almost like he's digressed. He had a lot of issues early in his career, at least not early in his career, early as OSU career, of kind of still backpedaling when he's throwing it. His feet are just skittish and always moving. He's throwing from his back foot, and he's kind of back to that. And that's why he's underthrowing a lot of guys. So it's almost like he's in a funk. I don't know if that's a right term. I don't know if, again, you mentioned you're not a coach, so we don't know what they're seeing exactly. So I don't know if it's something different guys are doing pressure-wise or schematically in the secondary, but there's something different about him. And as far as he's not – the first 3 games, even though he struggled early against Arkansas, he looked like a 7-year vet. It was like, okay, this is why you want a guy like Alan Bowman. He's been through a lot, and he has not looked like that the last 2 weeks. I mean, he's a game manager. He's not going to do anything special. He's not going to run for 20 yards. He's not going to probably throw for 400, 500 yards. He's a game manager, but the thing is, being a game manager, you don't turn the ball over. And he was exactly that of what you wanted of, hey, when you need to play, he was going to make it. He was going to make anything special, but most of the time he's going to hand the ball off to Ollie Gordon and do what he needed to when Ollie couldn't do it. And that he's just not doing that this year, because I don't know, a lot of it too is they are relying on him a lot more, because people are having to load the boxes, the offensive line has been blocking for Ollie for whatever reason. And so the weight has been kind of put on his shoulders. And I don't know if he's just, no disrespect to him, that's just not who he is. He's not the kind of guy to carry the team and be the superstar of the team. So again, another long-winded answer of, after the last 2 weeks, I can't tell you any idea what might happen. He may be like Tulsa, where he throws for 5 touchdowns against the weak secondary, and he may be where has you guys excited for the way your secondary looks after Saturday.
Yeah. What is the mood? I mean, I know I've seen some of the chatter on X, but overall, in your opinion, as someone who covers the team on a regular basis, what do you think the mood is around Stillwater? Is it really negative right now? Is it do people have confidence that Gundy and the staff are going to turn things around? What's kind of the feel right now, do you think?
Definitely negative, right? Disappointed because I don't know how many of the West Virginia fans watched the Utah game, but you look at the box score, and it was a 3-point game. And I think if it was a normal 3-point game, or even if OSU didn't get blown out by Kansas State, they would be more confident. But Marshall and I, we were talking to another guy that covers the team on our way back to our car from the Utah game, saying, like, I don't know if I've ever seen a 3-point domination. Like, Utah dominated them and only won by 3 points, which OSU kind of got the offense going late and scored 2 touchdowns late. Obviously, you can look at the score and know Kansas State handled them. And so I think that has fans more disappointed than anything, where it's hard for them to be confident and say, hey, that's the 2 toughest games on the OSU schedule, theoretically. I mean, that Utah's picked to finish first in the conference. Kansas State was picked to finish second. Your goal was to probably go 1-1 after that and it's still be in really good standing. Because obviously Kansas State starting 1-1. They're in pretty good standing right now in Big 12 standings. And so I think it's just how it happened and how it's not just, they lost blowouts because they knew the defense was going to struggle. I think it's more of just how it's happening right now is why they are so disappointed.
Yeah, makes sense. And West Virginia fans are in a similar situation. I mean, the 2 teams we lost to were Pitt and Penn State. Penn State's a good team, Big Ten team, top 10 team, right? But it was the way West Virginia played in that game. The game was extremely hyped. Pat McAfee was in town. Everybody was excited. This coaching staff all season had been talking about how good this team was, how talented they were, and then they went out and played the complete opposite of that. So they weren't even competitive in the game. Most fans didn't necessarily expect West Virginia to win, but they expected it to be competitive, and it wasn't. And then the Pitt loss, obviously that game, West Virginia had that game won until the final 4 minutes and lost it. So it's just two bad ways to lose football games. And then we beat an FCS team, but that FCS team put up 300 yards passing. Mm-hmm. And then that had fans irritated. And then West Virginia beats Kansas. But again, Kansas might be outside of Houston, might be the worst team in the conference. I don't know. So that, and they had to come back from 11 down to win that one. So it's, it's verdict still out, I guess, as to how this team can finish or will finish. But, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people wanting regime change in Morgantown right now, to be honest with you. And, obviously both teams still have the goals ahead of them. Mm-hmm. It's an uphill climb, obviously, for Oklahoma State because they've already lost 2 games in league play. But the schedule on paper at least does get easier for the Pokes, right? So hopefully, and like you said last year, look what they did a year ago. They were able to turn things around after a similar start. So I never count Mike Gundy teams out. He's shown in the past that you never know. He has this ability to make changes, tweaks in the middle of seasons and get things turned around. He's shown it in the past. So until I stop seeing him do that, yeah. I'll never, ever bet a lot, at least, against an Oklahoma State team.
And I guess the luxury that West Virginia does have is OSU's bye week is next week. You kind of still get them in maybe this funk of trying to figure stuff out because OSU was almost like a new team last year during the bye week. And that happens several times during the Gundy era of, I don't know what it is about the bye week. He acts like they just rest, but, they kind of put their brain trust together and figure stuff out. And so you still do get OSU when they are still trying to figure stuff out, when they didn't have the week to figure out, hey, how can we start running the ball again with Ollie Gordon?
Right. You and I were talking off air about, and I'm going to ask you a question around this in a minute, but for those of you watching and listening to this, Dekota and I were talking off air about the spread on this game. It started out at -6. Oklahoma State was a 6-point favorite. All of a sudden, it's -3 now. Oklahoma State still favored, but man, a 3-point swing almost overnight. So it's basically an even game because we all know home team typically gets 3 points in these things. So we have Dekota or I, neither one know what the heck has brought that on. But if you want to bet on the game, you can go right now to BetUS online and place a bet on the game. And they have a promo we're going on right now, 150% off, or 150% sign-on bonus, rather, on your first deposit. if you use promo code YouTube150 at checkout, it's a 150% bonus on your first deposit, and then 125% on your next 2 deposits. And you see on the BetUS ticker below there, we have the spread and the over-under on the game also, which is set at 65.5 right now. So they're expecting a high-scoring contest apparently in this one. They're expecting both of these defenses to struggle apparently.
I don't think they're banking on the offenses. They're just banking on the defense.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. But anyway, so and don't forget, if you do decide to bet on the game, please do so responsibly, and you must be 18 years of age. But speaking of that, Dekota, you and I talked off air, and in this, we're going to try kind of transition to the defensive side of the ball. But we don't know what has brought on all that money. The big money apparently is coming in for West Virginia on this game. We don't know why that is. The only thing you pointed out was that, you know, one of Oklahoma State's better players may be out for this game. Can you tell the audience about that a little bit, please?
Yeah, we don't really know the status for Nick Martin. He's a linebacker. He led the country in tackling last year. He would be leading the team in tackle if Trey Rucker, one of their safeties, hasn't lost his mind and is also one of the leading tacklers in the country. You have Nick Martin, who's number 2 this year, but still a top 20 tackler in the country. He's everywhere. He's one of the leaders on the team, and they need him even more because, like we were talking before as well, OSU, as far as we know, is already without Colin Oliver. So if you had, hey, who's the best guy on the defense? The only argument would be between Colin Oliver and Nick Martin. There's a chance they're missing both of them on Saturday. Gundy's pretty tight-lipped with that stuff. We won't know till they'll give us an injury report on the pregame radio show, usually about 2 hours-ish before the kickoff.
Wow.
So we may not know Martin's status until then. Maybe Vegas has more insight on something we don't know. But who knows? Maybe Gundy's making quarterback change, and we just don't know about it yet, and Vegas does. You never know. Other than that, OSU's been healthy. They've had an offensive tackle out, another linebacker out, but that linebacker is a transfer who's never actually seen the field for OSU yet. They have an Arizona State transfer who's plugged in fine at that tackle spot. He could be back this week. Jake Springfield, starting left tackle. But other than that, there was a lot of swings in the Utah game, but it made sense because Cam Rising's going to play. Cam Rising's not going to play. Utah's favored big. Then OSU was favored. Then Utah's. Like, it was so back and forth, but that was all on Cam Rising. But there's just no huge storylines for this one that would cause a swing like that.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it when I first looked at it before the show started because I was wanting to put the odds on the ticker, and I was like, man, -3. Gosh, it was just -6 24 hours ago. So anyway, crazy stuff. But speaking of that Oklahoma State defense, I mean, right now, man, I thought West Virginia's defense was struggling. Oklahoma State, man, they're struggling as well. Last in the league right now, at least, in total defense and rushing defense. Now, as a West Virginia fan, I look at that and go, man, C.J. Donaldson, Jaheim White could have Garrett Green even maybe have a field day in this. Are those numbers, do you think, skewed any at all by the level of competition? Do you think the Oklahoma defense, or are those numbers telling the truth? Has that defense struggled, especially to stop the run?
The schedule's been tough, right? You get Arkansas, you get the 2 best teams in the Big 12. Their FCS opponent was South Dakota State, who's won the FCS title the last 2 years. So they really have – the only easy opponent they had would be Tulsa when they went there down the road. But even TU, when they played them, their first 2 drives, they ran it pretty easily on OSU. Alan Bowman had a day. He threw 5 touchdowns. It's a weak defense. TU's not a good team, plainly. And so they ran up the score pretty quickly on them. So they had to avoid that, or they had to get rid of that running game and start having to throw a lot with a quarterback rotation that they have going on in Tulsa. But I think if that was a normal game where maybe Bowman was having an off day, they didn't score a lot, TU's running numbers probably would have been worse than they were too. So I don't think it's competition. I think it's just, they have a bad run defense, I think is the assumption.
Yeah. And that's, that surprises me, especially with Nick Martin there at linebacker spot, right? And I know you talked about Trey Rucker in the secondary. I was really surprised to see that stat because I remember the Oklahoma State team from 22, I think it was, when they were dominant, man. I remember going to Morgantown and watching them absolutely or maybe in 21. Anyway,
21.
they absolutely dominated West Virginia and Morgantown. West Virginia could not do anything. I think Oklahoma State won the game like 27-3 or something. I mean, it was a complete blowout. And that Oklahoma State defense was absolutely elite that year. Now I understand though that they have a different coordinator now, but it doesn't seem to me like that Oklahoma State defense has ever gotten back, not even to the elite level, but back to a level close to where they were in that 21 year. Is that an accurate statement, or what are your thoughts behind that?
They didn't just switch coordinators. So they had Jim Knowles. Basically, that was the year they lost to Baylor by an inch, basically, in the Big 12 championship game, won the Fiesta Bowl. The defense carried that team, like by far, which was different for OSU fans to watch. Like I'm in Oklahoma, and I've been covering OSU or around OSU football my whole life, and you're used to them being all about the offense. You're just not used to very good defense at OSU. So that was strange for OSU fans at the beginning of the year. They're like, this is a bad football team. They're not scoring a lot of points. And then Jim Knowles goes to Ohio State. They bring in Derek Mason from Auburn. He's only there a year. He leaves. Then all of a sudden he brings in Brian Nardo from a Division II school from Gannon. And he not only brings in a new young coordinator, the reason he went to get Brian Nardo is Gundy decides to do a whole new 3-3-5 scheme. And so they've not only, again, they're not two coordinators removed from Jim Knowles. They're an entire defensive scheme removed. Iowa State runs it. Gundy thought it was best for the way Big 12, kind of with their run and gun kind of offenses that you see a lot in this conference. He thought that was going to be best. Coincidentally, Stillwater High School, where Gunnar Gundy, his son, comes from, kind of the mastermind behind this 3-3-5. If you go back to the series, it's called like Kill the Captain is what they call it. And it comes back to Stillwater High School, kind of the mastermind as their defensive coordinator. So it's something he probably watched of a lot. And it's just kind of, they go all out. At the high school level, they're just, hey, we're going to go all in, trying to get the quarterback. And that's what we're doing. Obviously, at the Division I level, you got to kind of calm things down a little bit. But essentially, he still wants that base 3-3-5 defense. And it's hard to say that it's not working because it's been an odd situation where they haven't stuck to it. I mean, midway through the year, they're giving up big plays. Then all of a sudden, you are scooting guys up, and you're like a 4-2-5 almost instead of a 3-3-5. So sometimes they're in 3-3-5, sometimes in 4-2-5. So I don't know if Gundy ever went all in and went through the growing pains to get where they want to be now in it, because I think they're still going through those growing pains because they hadn't taken time to just be like, hey, we're going to take lumps. We suck on defense anyway. Let's just go ahead and figure this 3-3-5 out. You get the right personnel in it. He had a Gannon transfer come in. It would be under-recruited, but he's been great in Colin Oliver's place because he's been in the system like this before, and he was kind of recruited to be in the system. So maybe in the long run it'll help, but it just hasn't been given a chance so far. And the main issue right now is it has given up huge plays. They tend to come up when they need to in clutch time, but sometimes you need that clutch time because the defense gave up. I think they led the country last year in chunk yards given up of plays over 10 to 20 yards, whatever that range is.
Yeah. As a West Virginia fan, I've seen the 3-3-5 defense up close and personal a lot. They ran it under Rich Rodriguez with Jeff Castile as the defensive coordinator. When Dana Holgerson got the job, well, Bill Stewart continued to run it because he kept Jeff Castile on. Dana Holgerson came in. He decided to go to a 4-3 or, 4-down line. That didn't work. So after about 2 years, he decided to go back to a 3-3-5. So they brought in Tony Gibson, who worked for Jeff Castile on the old staff, brought him in to be defensive coordinator, and they ran that really up until the time Dana left. And man, you're talking about West Virginia fans used to get extremely frustrated as well with the the big plays that it could give up. At times, when you blitz, man, sometimes you leave that middle of the field wide open. Tight ends used to absolutely eat West Virginia's defense alive at times. But there were also some games that they would get 4, 5, 6 sacks in a game and beat the other team because they were wreaking havoc in the backfield. So it's kind of a feast or famine to me. It's almost a feast or famine defense, in my opinion. That's just me as an observer, as a fan and someone who talks about the game a lot. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I don't really care as long as the defense works. I don't really care what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Iowa State has proven it can work. The version they run is extremely good. I mean, they're playing at defense at a really high level right now. So the 3-3-5 can work, but I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to your Jimmies and Joes, right? Do you have the right guys to run it and guys who are talented enough to run it? So, but that being said, sticking on the defensive side of the ball, outside of Trey Rucker at safety, what other players do West Virginia fans need to be on the lookout for if Nick Martin's out?
Yeah, you got Nick Martin out. So the linebacker area was kind of an odd thing this year because Colin Oliver's defensive end. They move him to linebacker. You have Kendall Daniels, who's just a freak athlete. You look at him. I mean, he was a freshman redshirt. You were like, you could look at that guy. Why is he not out there playing? They moved him to linebacker as well. So you got two out of your three linemen weren't even playing linemen last year, or linebacker last year, excuse me. And of course, you got Oliver out now. And so Kendall Daniels could be someone without Nick Martin. They're going to need to rely on him a lot. He's huge. He was, as OSU standards, a big-time recruit. He's down the road in bags. They actually lucked out, and now it's more of a crazy luck out because he was going to Texas A&M. Texas A&M was like, hey, we want you to play linebacker because you're massive. And he's like, I don't want to play linebacker. And OSU was like, you can play safety here. So he went to OSU, played safety, and then this year they're like, you're going to play linebacker. So now he's obviously still playing linebacker in college. So he's just a massive guy, though, but great. I think he's just kind of been overshadowed because he is next to guys like Colin Oliver and Nick Martin. Then you have Trey who's exploded. The secondary, again, some days you got the Smith brothers. They'll come up big plays. And then some days you scratch your head and you're like, I don't know if those guys should be out there. But I would say if you want to look for a guy, like one particular guy who could have a big game on Saturday, especially with Nick Martin out, it would be a guy like Kendall Daniels in the linebacker because he's the only starting linebacker that would be left.
Okay. Is he a middle linebacker or
No,
outside linebacker?
He's an outside linebacker. He moved in, and they put him in coverage some. It was another thing that Gundy was kind of hush-hush about. He casually mentioned, yeah, we're moving Kendall up. And then he would be like, well, I don't know. It depends on if he figures it out. And then all of a sudden, we get the first depth chart of the season, and he's at linebacker. And we're like, I guess you're moving him there? And he's like, maybe. And it's like, okay. I mean, he's there. He's not. But, yeah, I mean, so they move him around a lot. They have some hybrid guys, kind of like Colin Oliver would still go on the edge a little bit too, which is going to be – I mean, that they struggle with pass rush. So no Colin Oliver, no Nick Martin. I mean, Gary Green's going to have – it should have about all day back there to pass and run, do whatever he wants to do.
Yeah. Well, West Virginia's O-line has played well. They've not, they could play better. I mean, they've been very strong on the tackles, both tackle spots. Wyatt Milam obviously is potentially playing his way into being a first-round draft pick. He'll probably at least be a second-rounder. And then on the right side, we've got Nick Malone, who's been grading out extremely well. He replaced last year's starter Doug Nestor. He's grading out extremely well according to PFF. So he's having a good year. The middle, we lost Zach Frazier in the middle, which is a huge loss. Brandon Yates has been playing okay there, though. I mean, it's not been bad. But I guess if you say if you want to point out a weak spot on that O-line, it is the middle. The guards, maybe the right guard, center, maybe even left guard at times spots. But overall, the O-line has been pretty solid. I mean, they have a lot of starts under their belt, a lot of experience. So I do expect them to have a good day against Oklahoma State. But one of the big questions I have, as a fan, is how good can the receivers do against the Oklahoma State secondary, and can West Virginia run the football? That's going to be the two big question marks for me on that side of the ball.
My answer to those would be yes.
Okay, interesting. So it doesn't sound like your expectations are super high for this team.
They were, like I said, you talked to me 3 weeks ago. I would have said, I don't know if this team can hang with anyone in the country, but the defense hasn't taken a turn like we thought they would, even if it's a little bit better. And then the offense, for whatever reason, with all the talent they have, just can't get anything going. I know I'm going to look like I was the sky is falling eventually, because I would assume, again, with this much talent, the things that Gundy has done in the past, eventually I would think this offense figures stuff out. Unfortunately for West Virginia fans, it may be Saturday, may not be. It may be 2 or 3 weeks from now. And so at the moment, no, until I see something different, just because I think, I don't know. It's just it's the issues have been there. I think they didn't bite them as much the first 3 weeks, but the same issues have been there all week or all season. Yeah. And so if you haven't fixed them to this point, are they going to get fixed? And you just now you're just playing tougher teams that are exploiting those problems.
Right. One last thing we'll discuss, and then I'll let you get out of here. But obviously, Jaden Bray is coming back to Stillwater. I'm sure that's going to be a big moment for him. What are your thoughts about Jaden Bray coming back? And is that something, I'm assuming Oklahoma State fans are they cheering for, rooting for Jaden Bray to do well outside of this game, obviously? It appeared to me like he left on pretty good terms.
It seems like it's good terms. And I think 2 or 3 years ago, it was a different time. It was like everyone that left OSU, fans were like, "Oh, good riddance," Now it's the opposite. Now we'll put out a story and say, "Hey, so and so's entered the transfer portal," and they're like, "Good for them. I wish them well." It's just something they're used to now. Obviously, I think they would hate to see Jaden Bray explode on Saturday, just because it would be one of those what if moments, because OSU fans saw signs of, man, this guy's good, but he was always hurt. He had a couple injuries. So he could never just find his footing to be one of the guys there. And so I'm sure it would hurt them if he had a big game and they're like, man, we could have had that if he could just stay healthy. But yeah, OSU fans overall, I think just like most fan bases, I'm sure West Virginia is the same way. At this point in time, it's just like, whatever, almost every conference game, almost every game, it seems like is someone on the roster that had been on your team eventually at some point.
Right. Yeah, West Virginia fans were very excited about getting him to Morgantown. He hasn't really his numbers haven't been what we expected it to be, but I'm sure it takes time for a player to adjust to a new team and a new system. And I think that's probably the case with him. Right now, I was looking at his stats. He's caught 2 passes for 88 yards, no touchdowns, and he did have a 44-yard completion. I think it was the Pitt game. I think it was a really big play in the game at the moment it happened. So he hasn't. I mean, it's not like he's been a bust. He just, for whatever reason, he hasn't been, hasn't put up the numbers we thought. But that could change at any time. We're expecting it to, because they said he had a really good offseason, and they seem to like him. I think his teammates respect him and like him a lot. So I think he was a good addition to the room.
Yeah, he's definitely a good addition for any room, I think.
Yeah. And he's talking about transfers. Our fan base, it's gotten a little better, but the West Virginia fan base typically, man, they do not like when a guy leaves. But, man, if they leave to go to a conference school, they don't usually wish them. Not everybody's like that, but, man, it's we had a former edge rusher named Jared Bartlett who graduated from West Virginia, spent 4 years, maybe 5 in the program, transferred and played. He's playing his senior year at Cincinnati now. Fan base was not happy about that one.
OSU has now experienced Trace Ford transferred from OSU to OU. So I think once they had to go through that, they're like, you know what?
Yeah.
But now they have Gavin Freeman. He was an OU kid.
Yeah.
Now they swapped at some point. And so once you start crossing Bedlam lines, I guess none of the other stuff
Great
matters.
point. Yeah, great point. I mean, fan bases have I'm a fan. We're fickle, man. We get so emotional, but we get mad when a player leaves our team, but then we don't realize, hey, we just took somebody from another team. What's the difference? It's kind of turnabout's fair play, right? I mean, that's kind of and that's the way the game works now, man. Players can leave, players can come and go. You just have to get used to it.
Yep.
Well, Dekota, man, one more time before we let you out of here, let everybody know where to find you, your work, and again, what it is you do.
Yeah, you can read all things Oklahoma State at pistolsfireandblog.com. There's we got our own podcast there as well. Marshall and I are on it, but we have guys who are dedicated to podcasts. We cover anytime West Virginia's come to Stillwater for whatever sport it is. I bet you can click over there and know how things are going and what you're getting into. And you can follow our site at Pistols Guys. And you can follow me at Dekota Gregory. And again, my name's spelled wrong, so it's Dekota.
Yeah. Yeah, so I appreciate you spelling it out because this will go up on audio only platforms. So if you're watching again, it's Dekota Gregory at Dekota Gregory on X, and then it's at Pistols Guys as well. If you want to look up the account for their large account for the site, and then go to pistolsfiringblog.com to check out their work and find the podcast and everything and their articles and everything else. Dekota, thank you again for coming on the show, man. It's been a pleasure. Don't forget, folks, go check out BetUS Online Sportsbook and Casino if you want to place a bet on this game or any other game. Take advantage of that 150% sign-up bonus on your first bet. If you're new to the site, and then also Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner Attorneys at Law. They are your personal injury and medical malpractice attorneys in West Virginia and Virginia. Check them out if you need their assistance at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. Dekota, thanks again. And good luck covering the team this week, man. Hope things go well. And then next time you make it to next time they play in Morgantown, man, maybe we can meet up or something.
We'll have to. We'll have to find you.
Absolutely. Hey, take care and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, too.